Well, imagine my surprise when I checked my email and found I got a partial refund for Total War Pharaoh. And there's more going on. We've got free expansions to Warhammer DLC, we've got a price cut for Total War Pharaoh, and seemingly an attitude of apology as Creative Assembly try to end this year with an apology and some promises. But elsewhere, a $1 billion company has defeated a $1 trillion company in court. And Epic Games' win here could actually change the industry somewhat completely, because they've kind of defeated Google. It's pretty damn crazy. Meanwhile, patient gamers, you guys are continually getting the absolute best of deals when it comes to games, and there's actually good news for the upcoming Suicide Squad game, actually becoming, anyway, more like a classic Rocksteady title, and a bit less live service BS, which potentially is a real good win for us. What's definitely a good win for us is today's sponsor. Subscriptions, they're absolutely everywhere. I've accrued too many of them, don't know about you, but seriously, it's a lot to keep track of, right, isn't it? But dealing with them is just one of the many things that Rocket Money, today's sponsor, manages. They are an all-in-one finance platform who are there to help you save more money and spend less money, and they can help a hell of a lot. Even right now today, where you can get started for free at rocketmoney.com/Bellular. So, take these subscriptions, right? Rocket Money will securely and safely identify recurring charges for you. And then, with just a tap from you, you can start to cancel those unwanted subscriptions. It's super easy, super fast. If it's something that's been on your to-do list, but you've put it off maybe, well, Rocket Money just makes it so damn simple to do. What about bills? Do you want your bills to be lower, but you don't want to spend, half your life listening to whatever hold music your utility provider has? Well, you can upload your bills and have Rocket Money negotiate your bills down for you. They've also got their smart saving features to automate good financial practices. Because, hey, if you set that stuff on autopilot, then you make one good decision and it just keeps on rolling all the time. Another thing, having a score for everything is nice. I mean, come on, we are gamers, we do like to make numbers go up. And they've got a really cool net worth tracker. You plug all your stuff in there and it's a really just satisfying way to track your own progress. And that motivation is important. So, if you want to spend less and save more and have better control over your finances, join over 5 million members today at rocketmoney.com/Bellular, or just click the link in the description to get started for free and then unlock even more features with premium. That's rocketmoney.com/Bellular. Be sure to use the link so that they know that we sent you. Well, if you've been watching this channel, you probably know the various cock-ups that have happened with Total War. I'm going to read out this bit of their statement. "We see the confusion, frustration, and distrust across the community, and it breaks our hearts. We make games to bring you joy, to inspire love of history, of fantasy and strategy games. Total War is our everything. We care about as deeply as you." They say that recently they have failed to demonstrate that in their actions. That certainly is a better way to frame it, because ultimately actions are what matters. Even though, yes, I know what we're currently reading here are words. They say they are sorry. They say they cannot fix the issues overnight, but they will work towards a more transparent and consistent relationship. These are the words of Roger Callum in a December message to fans. He basically broke down some of the immediate and future changes. Let's get into them. For Total Warhammer 3 then, we've got a free update to the Shadows of Change DLC, which will target a release of February 2024. They're going to update us on what that content actually is in the new year, but they basically say they are enhancing our offer with more content. The story there is basically was it that a Lord pack essentially went up to the price of a race pack, where people felt that the value proposition was heavily diminished from what had previously came out. It seems that they're going to try and right that wrong, but obviously we'll have to see how much content is actually there. They've also, as a result of this, delayed the Thrones of Decay DLC. It's going to be coming out April 2024, and it will match the new content level for the updated Shadows of Change. And they've confirmed that before any pre-orders happen, all content will be transparently displayed to potential buyers, and all changes to the base game will be very clearly communicated. Overall then, that's fairly major. Basically what we'd heard from insiders was that there were just issues around profitability. Essentially issues around the size of the Total War audience and their ability to actually make enough money to justify the investment of doing that DLC. And then basically they tried to cut stuff down, sell less for more, kind of like optimize, how much do they have to spend to make X amount of money. It seems that maybe didn't work tremendously well, and also the community absolutely roasted them for it, to the point where they've clearly realized that, and perhaps we'll get on to the job cuts, but maybe all of these things are coming together to make them kind of realize how much of a big problem that was. Finally then, some acknowledgement of the last 10 hotfixes, that they are basically part of a changed approach to game management for them. So their intent, but not their commitment, which it's good that they're transparent, their intent is that essentially we'll get updates every 2 weeks. So overall then, that's a big improvement. Only time will tell. Pharaoh then. Well, Total War Pharaoh is no longer the price of a full, fat Total War game. It is now the price of a Saga title, which of course is exactly in line with what the damn thing is. Its RRP is now $39.99 in dollars and euros, $29.99 in British pounds, and this will retroactively be applied for all sales, and that does mean that people are getting refunds. As an example, I got a refund just by default, so that was pretty nice to happen. Now, the higher priced Deluxe and Dynasty editions are basically being removed from sale. It will only be the base edition. I don't think many people were buying Deluxe and Dynasty come on, obviously. Then, the first DLC for the game is actually going to be released for free for all players in the new year. They'll fully detail that closer to the time. Clearly, I think what's going on here is they've realized this is absolutely screwed. And that DLC, which likely will have been worked on for a decent bit before the game actually came out, probably realized if they set that thing out for sale, but the game is pulling in literally hundreds of concurrent players, there's no way it will hit any sort of expectations. Therefore, if the expected value of that DLC in monetary terms ends up essentially being really, really tiny, then perhaps the expected value of saying, hey, game's cheaper and there's a free DLC, come and give it a shot. Chances are that latter case is going to perform better for them. They currently intend to have further updates for Pharaoh, but they're not set in stone. The initial plans include map expansions, faction and culture additions, but these will need to be worked on. But I think more importantly, what we want to know about is Creative Assembly themselves. If you love these strategy games like I do, what can you actually expect? Is this just a short-term thing? Okay, so they've said their hope is to invest more in player channels, in surfacing actual developers of games, and in listening to player feedback. And that when they've got some firm updates on what the actions will be with that, they will let us know. And the sign-off to this, rather than being from one individual, was, and I think it's just more of a symbolic sort of gesture, it was from the entire leadership team of the company. Now, it is worth us noting here that all of this is following some plans from Sega for very significant layoffs at the company that are alleged to have essentially impacted all departments and teams. However, there are some material and tangible actions that are directly player impacting. So number one, we've got a 33% revenue refund for total sales of Total War Pharaoh Standard Edition, and even more for the Deluxe and Dynasty editions. Of course, there will be some, hits and platform fees and all of that stuff. So that is a bit of a hit, but realistically speaking, if this game sold very, very poorly, then maybe this wouldn't even be as large of a financial hit as you may expect. By comparison then, for Shadows of Change, we're not getting a form of refund, it's not getting a price drop, instead, more content will be added to it. Overall, my personal expectation here is that Shadows of Change, will be more than a normal Lord pack. I don't think it's going to be quite as much as a full race pack, but again, that's just kind of on them to prove. Now, thinking about all of those cuts, maybe some of those cuts have changed their, actually just changed their cash flows, changed a lot of that stuff to the point where maybe they're just refocusing on these more core bets. Maybe if you have a situation where the overall, financial performance of Creative Assembly is just a bit more based on Total War games and that kind of thing, and they're maybe just kind of scrap. I mean, obviously Hyenas is cancelled, but if they're no longer having to pay for a lot of that superfluous development for games that, unfortunately for the developers who were forced to, work on them, were not particularly wanted by their core audience, you could see things being better. I mean, if it feels less like money is being diverted away from Total War into other bets for, larger things like a live service shooter, then maybe that just means that the Total War people get to be the Total War people and focus on making money out of Total War, which is what I would prefer than them focusing on being maximally profitable from Total War so they can funnel it into some other bet that will probably fail. As they themselves said, actions are what are going to matter, so from now, we will talk about actions. I do have an upcoming video basically called "We Don't Need Creative Assembly Anymore." And I think, well, just look forward to that one. It will detail how, even aside from what CA are doing, there's a lot of really good things going on in both the strategy space and the Total War space itself. Next, then, we've got Epic Games beating Google in the antitrust suit, which could open up Android to third-party storefronts. And that's going to be fairly big, actually. So, here, the devil is in the details. Epic Games could not convince a judge in 2021 that Apple was maintaining a monopoly via its store by challenging their policies in court. But in 2023, Epic Games have convinced a jury that Google is maintaining a monopoly via its store by showcasing its basically various background deals that they've been doing to keep developers from starting their own stores. So essentially, that's what worked on the jury, and the jury are, well, the people who have ultimately made this happen. And the outcomes here are potentially, I mean, truly massive. Though I do wonder, like, as a PC gamer, I'm sure you remember whenever EA Games went onto Origin, and some people are just like, I couldn't be bothered. So I do wonder if we're now going to have that happen in the mobile space, where some people will try to achieve like higher profitability via their own store and try to force people onto their own store by not deploying onto the Google store. But then what happens if they just lose like a third of their customers in the process? And they're now at the stage where, yeah, they're more profitable per sale, but they just have fewer sales. That's what I'm really going to have to wonder. But the thing that really kind of beat it out here was the deals. It was the deals that meant that things were not an equal playground for developers. And I think that's when it kind of turns from like, yeah, there's one store on your phone, but if it's one store and on that store, different developers are playing via different rules, I mean, that's really going to convince a jury, right? So Spotify didn't pay anything to the Google Play Store when somebody pays for something through the Spotify payment system. And even if they do involve Google billing, Google's deal is only a 4% cut, where of course the regular Google rate is 15%. That's fairly massive, of course. Spotify on their music streaming business is on absolutely razor thin margins. If you're wondering why Spotify has been moving into podcasts and into audiobooks, it's because they can basically expect to see better margins on that stuff versus whenever they've got to do a payout to the music industry. But basically, right, between this and Google offering some sweetheart deals to developers who may otherwise be threatening them of doing what Epic tried to do with the Epic Games Store on mobile phones, Google were basically found to be using their position to take control and make serious money, estimated at over $12 billion in operating profit from the store in 2021. And that brings us to the outcome of the trial. So here's what the jurors were actually given to decide on a yes-no basis too. Did Epic prove the existence of a relevant antitrust market? The answer from the jury is yes. Did Epic prove Google willfully acquired and maintained this monopoly power by engaging in anti-competitive market practices? Yes. Again, what they did with Spotify. Different people playing by different rules, not competitive. Did Epic prove that Google entered into agreements that unreasonably restrained trade in that market? Yes. On all presented counts. Did Epic prove that Google unlawfully tried to use the Google Play Store to, have Google Play billing? Yes. And did Epic prove that it was injured as a result of Google's violation of antitrust laws? Yes. Yeah. I know, right? You generally do not expect to see the incumbents actually be cracked open here, even if it is the case of a $1 billion company beating a $1 trillion company. So basically, it's a yes on all counts. As for what Epic will get, it's kind of unclear because remedies to this will not be worked out until Christmas. But during the trial, they were asked for the following. Epic says it's asking for 3 things. Freedom for Epic and other devs to introduce their own stores without restriction, total freedom to use its own billing system, and an anti-circumvention provision just to be sure Google can't reintroduce the same problems through some alternative creative solution. And per the judge, number 3 there is unnecessary and won't happen because if Google do try to circumvent things, then Epic should just, come back to court. Now, the incentives for Epic are pretty damn clear. Like, they just want Fortnite to be on the Google Play Store and for them to not give away a large chunk of all of the V-Bucks that are, that they're selling. And, if this ends up being a situation that sort of Google are dealing with, you then have got to wonder how it will be for Apple, So That is all quite interesting to me. Now, Microsoft and Xbox are also undoubtedly going to have a little celebration here because they may have just begun the process via this of securing a guaranteed way to have xCloud and Xbox Game Store on mobile without having to do the super hard work of getting Google to agree to any special terms or doing the legal work themselves, because Tim Sweeney, in search of more V-Bucks, has kind of done it for him. And of course, you got to remember, Microsoft own King, and I'm sure Microsoft would love it if all that Candy Crush revenue was going through their own payment system, right? So all of this pretty damn fascinating, and really it will, effectively change the business model of a lot of these devices and actually push more onto the upfront cost that consumers will experience, because potentially, maybe in the span of say 10 years, the likes of Apple and Google won't be able to depend on having as much money come from their own storefront. Just think about how Roblox is becoming a massive platform, similar for Fortnite. A lot of these platforms could have existed and done well on these stores. In the future, well, look, V-Bucks, if those V-Bucks can be purchased way cheaper, like actually cheaper to audiences, that will probably move a lot of people over. So I've got to imagine some people in these big companies will actually be having a bit of a quiver, because this does change the game. Okay, speaking of changing games, Suicide Squad is going to eventually kill its online-only requirement. This is kind of great. So, after nearly 12 months of additional dev work, Rocksteady have been able to confirm that they will have an offline mode for the upcoming live service title Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, after an undetermined few more months of additional post-launch development. When this game, helpfully abbreviated to SSK, TJL, finally releases in February, it won't have an offline, but it will be coming, and this does kind of make sense. And here's what they said, quote, "We are happy to confirm we are planning to add an offline story mode that will give players the option to experience the main campaign without an internet connection. We're planning to provide this update in 2024, and we'll give more details when available." What does this mean? It means if you're a patient gamer, you're going to pick this game up for cheaper, and you're just going to be able to play it main story only, and you won't have to worry about any of the live service kind of bullshit trappings. That is really, really good. Now, in fairness, I think this is a defensive play. I think for WB Games, they don't really care about this. I think WB Games 100% are just wanting more live service stuff. We've, seen that in so much of what they've done, and also a lot of what they've said. This, though, I think is Rocksteady doing what they can to make the situation that they've been thrust into just a bit better, which of course is something that I'm all for. So props to the developers who've been able to make this happen. And with that said, that is it for today's episode. Of course, check out today's sponsor if you want to support the show, and you can check out this other episode over here. It's pretty damn interesting, and I'll see you over there.